fundamental values. During a hearing organized jointly by the FEM and LIBE committees of the European Parliament on the 24th of February to address the situation in Poland, Helena Dalli, the EU Commissioner on Equality, reaffirmed this position. At the same time, she acknowledged that when member states adopt legislation on abortion, this legislation must be compliant with fundamental rights as defined in international standards. She also recognized that current Poland's regulation on abortion is incompatible with Poland's international obligations. She declared also that European Union is committed to fundamental values and to gender equality and will act if treaties are breached. And now I would like to introduce our speakers who will tell us more about these issues. So first we will hear from Robert Biedroń, who is a Polish member of the European Parliament, affiliated with Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats, and as the Vice Chair of the European Parliament's Committee on Women's Rights and Gender Equality, the FEM committee I mentioned. He's one of the leading voices in the Parliament on gender equality, LGBT rights, and rule of law in Poland. Then we will hear from Karolina Więckiewicz, who is a lawyer and activist with Abortion Dream Team, an NGO which assists people in Poland who need abortion but cannot obtain it legally in Poland. And Karolina actually couldn't be with us tonight, so she made the recording for us. Our third speaker is Dr. Katarzyna Sękowska-Kozłowska, a researcher at the Institute of Law Studies of the Polish Academy of Sciences and the director of Poznań Human Rights Center, a specialist in international law standards on gender issues, including reproductive rights. And lastly, Hanna Łuczkiewicz, a board member of the association Elles Sans Frontières, which organizes annually Brussels Women's Congress, will tell us a bit about the protest and other actions organized by Polish activists here in Brussels. Please, Mr. Biedroń, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for inviting me for this important debate, and so actual one. And I think important also in the context of the general tendency within the European politics and global politics of hybrid annexation of human rights and limitations in this context. And I think this phenomenon we're talking about of limitation of women's rights in Poland should be also perceived as a part of this well, a battle we are having on values and supremacy on the values and radicalization in some parts of Europe and the world. So I think the limitation of women's rights in the context of reproductive rights and access to health services in this context, right to access of the safe and legal abortion in Poland is a kind of tsunami of unconstitutional and human rights limitations in Poland and many other countries. We see the similar tendencies not only within the framework of Polish politics, but also in Hungary, in Romania, in many other countries of European Union. And of course, maybe not as radical in the context of women's rights in those countries, but we see that there are also similar attempts, and we don't know it will bring in the future. So I think talking about the European Union context of what has happened in Poland and the reaction of European Union, I would agree that we don't have unified legislation concerning abortion right. But we must have in mind that we have treaties, the Treaty on European Union and Article 2 with its EU values we agreed on. We have European Convention on Human Rights. We have related to also issue of abortion, the case law of the European Court of Human Rights. We have whole series of other documents we can rely on talking about some of the framework we can maneuver discussing that. And of course, for me also as a social democrat, as a progressive politician, my goal is that one day all citizens of European Union will have equal rights. And in this context, my dream is that one day Polish women have the same rights as women in France, Belgium, or Netherlands. This is not the case. We live in a union of unequal rights. We live in a union where women, even the rights, the limited rights they have, they're being even more limited. I want to remind you that with the decision of the Puppet Constitutional Tribunal and the ruling, women's rights have been limited in Poland in comparison with 2004 when Poland was entering the European Union. So there are less rights for women in this context than in 2004. It is a paradox because what we were hoping of is that women will have more rights and we will all have more rights, more liberties. Our rights will be more preserved, and this is not a case in this situation. But talking about our resolution, the recent resolution we were referring to, and I was a rapporteur of this resolution, and somehow me and our group will launch discussion on that. I think this is the most progressive and most advanced document issued by the European Parliament so far. Why is that? First of all, we must remember that it was supported by main political groups within the European Parliament. This document was supported not only by progressives I represent as SND, not only by GUE, now European Left, Greens, Renew, but also usually playing tricky games, I would say, on abortion rights, EPP, European People's Party, which usually had some abstentions concerning not only abortion, but granting women sexual and reproductive rights. This was not the case with this resolution, which allowed us to embrace a whole spectrum, not only of countries, but also of views. This also is a very progressive text, as I said. We are finding there, for instance, one of my favorite passages, which states, where it's their body, it's their choice. It's a very progressive, of course, we in Poland in the women's strike, we use it a lot, but for a document issued by European Parliament, and having it in the resolution, this is a progressive statement, I would say, and it's crucial in the context of the rights. Also, the resolution highlights that women's sexual and reproductive rights are related to multiple human rights, such as the right to life, freedom from inhuman or degrading treatment, the right to access healthcare, the right to privacy, information, and education, and the prohibition of discrimination. Also, we must remember that the resolution called for the EU institution to do more to support sexual and reproductive health rights across member states and to support grassroots and civil society groups that foster the rule of law. There is a call on the Commission to support member states in guaranteeing universal access to sexual and reproductive health services, including abortion, and to guarantee sexual reproductive rights by including abortion rights in the next EU health strategy. And I think it's fundamental. The expectation is that the most important document on EU health strategy within the framework will have abortion and sexual and reproductive rights included. I think it's a very important achievement. There is also a call on the Commission to adopt guidelines for the member state to ensure equal access to sexual and reproductive rights, goods and services in the line with EU law and the jurisprudence of the European Court of Human Rights. We also called on the Council and the Commission to provide adequate funding for the national and local civil society organizations to foster grassroots support for democracy, the rule of law, and fundamental rights in the member states, including Poland, and to immediately directly support programs and the Polish civil society organizations working to ensure that women's sexual and reproductive rights are protected. So in this context, we must remember that we are working on new EU perspective, and there is already a huge pressure on the European Commission to include this paragraph within the budgetary framework, and I represent also the budget committee besides FAM committee, with the expectation that this support will be a part of the package we want to deliver. And of course, within the EU legislative framework, it's hard to find directly the universal abortion rights, but with this resolution, we managed somehow to open more the door, which still was not wide open. We also are fortunate to have two role models in the Commission for that, and very progressive representatives in this matter, especially Commissioner for Equality and Commissioner Vera Jourova, who on many occasions have addressed that the situation in Poland is deteriorating in the context of rule of law, human rights, and democracy. And they also mentioned the abortion rights and the women's rights. So that's very important. And we also, as you know, we are also planning to continue the debates and the pressure on the Council and the Commission to do the further steps against Poland on this limitation, and call for the solidarity from the other member states, solidarity in helping accessing the safe and legal abortion in the other member states and providing the services for the Polish women. So there is much done and much has to be done, and European Union for sure will follow the situation, and we as FAM Committee and European Parliament and LIBE Committee also dealing with the liberties and human rights will also follow the situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we will play the recording from Karolina. Just a technical remark: the quality of sound, the volume of sound is not very high, so it may be, for those of you who don't have headphones, it may be useful to use them just to listen to the recording. I think we have a technical problem.
I'm sorry, I will try again.
Hello everyone, my name is Karolina Więckiewicz and I'm a lawyer and an activist in Poland working with Abortion Without Borders and Abortion Dream Team, and we are working on the advancement of abortion access for people from Poland, also on the destigmatization of abortion and normalization of abortion as a common experience, and we support people who need abortions, and we are giving them comprehensive information and support they need throughout this process. And I was asked to tell you a little bit today about the situation of people who need abortions in Poland. The situation is quite difficult, and it has been difficult since 1993 because our abortion law is one of the most restrictive abortion laws in Europe and in the world, because it only gives us a right to have an abortion in 3 very narrow and specific cases, which are when pregnancy poses a threat to our health or life, when pregnancy is a result of a criminal act, or when there are abnormalities in development of a fetus. And this situation became even more difficult after the decision that the Constitutional Court made in October 2020, when it was stated that this fetal abnormality ground for abortion is not in accordance with the Polish Constitution. It is quite obvious that from a legal point of view, from a human rights point of view, this judgment, this decision doesn't make much sense, but it has changed situation regarding abortion access, because nowadays people who used to have a chance and a possibility to have an abortion on this ground in a Polish hospital no longer can do this, no longer can demand this service from the state. And together with dozens of thousands of people a year, they have to find another option, because we are in a way lucky enough to have abortion freedom. Yes, we do not have abortion right. We do not have a right to have an abortion, and the state is in a way leaving us alone in this, but at least it does not punish us for having our own abortions, which means that we can have an abortion elsewhere, meaning that we can travel abroad to have an abortion, that we can take pills at home and cause our own miscarriages without any consequences, any legal consequences from the state. And it is quite, I would say, also fantastic that people who need abortions have options not to be alone in this, because there is and there has been a very strongly working network of people, activists, but also organizations and informal groups across Europe that are and have been helping people from Poland to have their abortions in a safe and dignified way. And so majority of people who need abortions have them at home with abortion pills that they obtain from and through feminist organizations such as Women Help Women and Women on Web. But also people can travel abroad. And it's been going on for around 15 years now, especially after we joined the EU, and it became more and more available for us and possible for us to travel abroad within the European Union, and also to use services in other countries. But for a long time, it was only possible to travel abroad for our abortions when we had money and when we had a possibility to travel. And Abortion Without Borders is an initiative of 6 organizations and groups that gathered together to change that. And since December 2019, it's not possible only for those who have money, because there is financial support provided by Abortion Without Borders for those who need to travel abroad to have their abortions and do not have enough money or do not have money at all to do that. And because we stand in a position that lack of money cannot be a reason for one to have their abortions. And yes, the situation changed a bit after the decision of the Constitutional Court, because another 1,000 people a year who used to have a right to have an abortion in a hospital in Poland now have to find another way to do this, and for the vast majority of them, the only option is to travel abroad to the Netherlands or to the UK, sometimes to Belgium or Spain. And after the judgment, the number of Abortion Without Borders became very popular. It was very widely shared during the protests. It was everywhere, on churches, on pavements, on walls, on people's balconies and windows, so on stickers and on transparents, like many other places, and it became very, very popular. And people, more people started calling us, but not because more people needed abortions, but more people knew about us. But yes, also those who used to have a right to have an abortion in a Polish hospital started calling more often, because they knew that traveling abroad is their only option. But it's not that people who had pregnancies diagnosed with some abnormalities, that they always had abortions in Polish hospitals, even before the judgment. It was very, very hard to get that service. So many people, and of course, before Abortion Without Borders, it was only available for those who had money. But those who had money would travel to to other countries in order not to fight with the Polish system, because it's not only the currently leading party that is abandoning us, that is neglecting the like abortion reality, that does not acknowledge what we really need, because it's been done by every single political party. That because our state in general has never been interested in what we do, what we need, and abortion law was never aimed at reflecting the actual social need and the actual reality. So the reality of abortion in Poland is basically this informal solidarity feminist movement that is very, very wide and growing wider. And the whole responsibility for abortion access in Poland is on our shoulders. It's done with our hands, our resources, and hopefully it will be a starting point of demanding responsibility from the state, that the state is not, exporting us to other countries and neglecting the fact that this need for abortion exists in every society and will exist forever, and that the states should take responsibility for that, like what happened in Argentina, when even right-wing politicians were saying that, okay, I'm not here to adopt laws that are only in accordance with my beliefs or with my private views, but I'm here to adopt the laws that reflect and are in accordance with what society needs. And hopefully one day we are gonna have such a revolution in thinking about abortion access in Poland as well. But right now, people who need abortions are either alone in this, or they find their way towards us to use Abortion Without Borders services, but also Abortion Dream Team, which is a local Polish group that is working on sharing and promoting comprehensive information about self-managed abortion with pills at home, and providing comprehensive information about this method, but also supporting those who need abortions. And we also work on destigmatization and normalization of abortion, because we think that there is a lot of stigma around abortion, and we do not, as a society, think of abortion as something that is a part of our reality, that is a part of our sexual lives, that we just need it because we can get pregnant, and as long as we can get pregnant, we will need abortions, and we are trying to work on this to show what abortion reality is, and not to treat abortion as a moral issue that everybody has a position on. So it's our everyday work to change that perspective, and to make abortion just seen as this part of our realities, of our lives. And briefly, this is just what I could have shared with you today. I'm sorry that it had to be recorded, but I'm going on vacation, and this is the only way that was possible for me to participate in this event and share some thoughts with you. I wish you a very good event, and if you have any questions, you can always contact us at Abortion Dream Team, and we are happy to answer the questions that you might have. Thank you and goodbye.
And now we'll hear from Dr. Sękowska-Kozłowska, who will speak about more legal aspects of the problem.
Hello, good evening. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be with you this evening. In my short speech, I would like to deal with generally with two issues. What we used to have before the decision of the Constitutional Tribunal, and what happened after, and what are possible solutions to survive with this decision. And because the situation before the decision was already addressed by previous speaker, I will be very fast on it. That's what I wanted to add to things that were already said, is that the law in Poland that used to be very restrictive was called as a so-called compromise on abortion, but it was not a compromise between the, let's say, society, but in fact it was the compromise between politicians and the Catholic Church. And as you know, Catholic Church is very influential in Poland, but it's not that much connected with people's faith. Of course, there is quite a lot of people who are attending church, but I think that these numbers are lower and lower nowadays. But the church is a very powerful still political player, and it used to support democratic opposition in communist time. And it's really ironic that the organization who was supporting people to fight for democracy and human rights then in democratic times is so oppressive. So this is about so-called compromise. And as you know, this law was very restrictive, and we used to have about 1,000 nowadays legal abortion per year. Like 10 or 15 years ago, it was about 200 legal abortion per year. And the problem is that it was very difficult to get legal abortion in practice, because even if it was permitted by the law, the doctors and the whole hospitals were very reluctant to provide services. It was several issues behind it. Mostly, this is provision about criminal responsibility of the doctor who perform abortion beyond the law. So even if women are not punished in Poland, as Karolina said, and were not punished and are not punished now because of having abortion, the doctors who will abuse their abuse law regulation which permit for abortion, then they can be punished, and this is up to 3 years of imprisonment in case of early abortion, and up to 8 years in case of late abortion. Moreover, not only doctors can be punished, but also other people who help women to have abortion. So, for instance, a partner who would buy pills can be also punished and bear criminal responsibility. And quite often doctors and hospitals, they have refused to perform abortion because of conscience clause, saying that it's against their religious beliefs. But this is also the problem of abusing this this possibility, and quite often it was rather not because of real religious feelings, but rather because of social pressure, or the fear that they can be stigmatized, for instance, by the society for performing abortion. And of course, there have been and still is the problem of lack of effective remedy in case of denial of abortion. So there is a procedure for making requests for abortion, for doctors to agree for women to have an abortion, but in practice it doesn't work very well, and the European Court of Human Rights has already pronounced on that. Perhaps you've heard about the judgment Tysiąc versus Poland. It was 2007. Then there was a case RR and P&S against Poland. And all these cases have been not about Polish restrictive law, because the tribunal itself, the European Court of Human Rights, it just said, okay, it's your decision how you shape your abortion law. But they said, the court, it said, okay, but if you allow to have abortion in some specific circumstances, you need to guarantee effective procedure to have this service made in reality. And if you will read these cases, you will see how women seeking for abortion were refused, stigmatized, how they were badly treated by the state system, by hospitals, by doctors. And these are really very painful stories. And of course, in these cases, the court found violation of right to privacy, and also of ban of prohibition of inhuman and degrading treatment. The European Court of Human Rights is not the only body who has stated that something is wrong with access to abortion in Poland. We have also numerous statements of United Nations treaty bodies, which have been repeating for years and years. Firstly, that Poland should provide access to legal abortion and to make these procedures available in practice. And secondly, there are some bodies such as Human Rights Committee, which directly said your anti-abortion law is too restrictive. You should liberalize it, and in this shape, as we used to had it in past, even with this possibility to have abortion in case of fetal abnormality, the Human Rights Committee said that it violates human rights. So this is about the Human Rights Committee, but also the CEDAW Committee, the Committee on the Rights of Child. All of them, they were speaking more or less the same voice as for access to abortion in Poland. So this is the situation that used to be in Poland before the decision of Constitutional Tribunal. And now I would like to present you some ideas or possibilities how to address the situation that we have nowadays. So first, what we can do in individual cases when women they need abortion. You already have heard presentation of Karolina, who is one of very dedicated persons to help women. So this is this path of self-help and for seeking abortion beyond the state system. And I must say that really these possibilities are nowadays more visible than ever. I have feeling that really this it's easy to get access to people who can help, and they are very loud, they are very visible, and yes, and I think that many people, they know that this possibility exists. As for having abortion under legal provisions within the state system, as you know, now it's really just in case of risk of health, risk for health or life of pregnant women, or in case of criminal act. So, but what about these cases of fetal abnormalities, which, as it was told, were the most reason of having abortion in the public system? So now some doctors are exploring possibility, and some lawyers are exploring possibility of performing abortion because of fetal abnormality, because of the mental state of a woman. So they try to use this holistic approach to health and to say that mental health is, of course, the very important element of health. And in case when women, she knows that a future child may die or be very, very ill. She may be depressed or even in a suicidal situation. So in this situation, some psychiatrists, they say, okay, we can provide a statement that her health or life is in threat. So on this condition, the abortion could be performed. But this is just a very initial idea, and these are only a few doctors who are claiming that they can do like that. And honestly speaking, I don't know any situation that any woman obtained abortion because of this reason, this idea. And I suppose that it's easier for them to travel or to do it at home with help of other people. There are also some activists who claim that doctors should perform abortions as it was before. This is, for instance, the women's strike, because the decision of Constitutional Court is not valid, because people who are judges now, some of them were elected not in accordance with law. So now there is a lot of controversies, and the Constitutional Tribunal is really very contested body, and its democratic legitimation is really rather contested. So some people, they saying, oh, doctors, you shouldn't look on this decision, just do what you have to do. But rather doctors are reluctant to follow this path, because it's well, in fact, they will break criminal law. As for general ideas what to do with the issue as we have now, because it's very troublesome for all, even for the current government, there are some ideas like to changing the law and to have new abortion law. And I must say that I see that the public support for liberalization of abortion law now is growing and growing, and more people and politicians, they are saying that we want back to the situation that was before, but we want to have more liberal abortion law as in the other EU countries. So, for instance, now there is a project of law prepared to allow for legal abortion on demand until 12th week, but I suppose that the week for success is rather weak. The prospect of success is rather weak. There's also some politicians, but rather right-wing, they promote the idea of referendum, so let people to decide how the abortion law should look like, but women's NGOs are rather skeptical about it, because all depends on the question that you ask, and they said that, okay, this is human rights issue, why should people decide if I should have abortion and the right to abortion or not? And there is also a path for seeking the support of international bodies. There has been an initiative of sending applications to the European Court of Human Rights. I was also one of persons who sent it. and we will see what will happen. The idea was that women who are in reproductive age, they can complain that the decision of the tribunal, which was announced but was not published for some months, so the legal situation was really very uncertain, and they claimed that it had bad impact on their reproductive choices, that it's referred to the right of for privacy and prohibition of inhuman and degrading treatment. And well, perhaps it's more symbolic action than the really strategic litigation, and here probably there can be the issue of a direct victim. But anyway, it's some strategy to engage European Court of Human Rights in this discussion about abortion in Poland. I think that complaints to UN treaty bodies can be more effective. I mean, mostly the Human Rights Committee, which already which already had decisions against Ireland on quite similar legal situation that we have now. And what more, perhaps European Union, this is what we shall discuss today. So I hope I was not too long. So these are things I wanted to present you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now our last speaker on Polish activism here in Brussels.
Hi, good afternoon. I know that I'm the last one, and I also don't want to speak too long because I'm sure you have plenty of questions to our speakers, and I'm actually an addition to those that have just spoken. So I'm a representative and board member of Elle Sans Frontières, which is a feminist organization based here in Brussels. It's the only and the first feminist organization that is gathering Polish women. We are around 30 and we were established in 2015. It's an initiative that is, of course, fighting for women's rights and for gender equality. But since a couple of years, actually, most of our activism is around women's reproductive rights in Poland. And before sharing with you some pictures to kind of make it a little bit more entertainment how we are actually doing our activism, I just want to mention that we organized around between 7 and 10 protests from October till January this year, gathering up to 400 people. So considering that it was Corona time, we also had to be very careful how we would organize those protests. Everything was legal under the police, the Belgian police supervision. And I have to say that we are in a super comfortable situation because we are protesting here in Belgium where we have plenty of support, but we also have security of protesting. What has not been mentioned before is that the situation in Poland was quite dramatic. In many cases, a lot of women were either injured or were arrested. During some of the protests, we had around 500,000 women and men protesting around the entire country, from smallest villages in the middle of Poland to big cities like Warsaw or Poznań. So it was a huge political but also societal movement. And I think this is something that was not really mentioned, that regardless of the consequences of that legislation, of that ruling, we've never seen since 1989 such a huge group of people expressing their satisfaction on a single cause. And even though it was on a single cause, it was on the abortion law, people joining those protests were expressing all sorts of dissatisfaction. For example, when we were organizing protests, the most common slogan that was chanted over and over again was about fuck peace, fuck law and justice, so the major political party in Poland. So you could see that regardless of the fact that it was about abortion, I think I've never seen anything like that, where we have such a huge dissatisfaction movement, which I think is this huge power that will not be stopped, or I don't really see a possibility to stop it. What is also quite interesting when it comes to our organization is the fact that, of course, we are based in Brussels, so we very early on realized that we have to be extremely political and engage with politicians. We invited many of members of the European Parliament, and many of them attended our protests. I'm happy to say that also Mr. Biedroń attended some of our protests, and it was not only a Polish cause. During our manifestations, we have politicians from all political groups and also quite high profile. For example, we had a chairwoman of the Socialist Party, Mrs. Garcia Perez. We had a chairwoman of the FEM committee. So it was a huge movement of Europeans believing that the issue that we are facing in Poland, it's not only a Polish topic. It is something that brings us all European women and men together, and it's something that we all have to feel very strongly about. And just one last comment before I finish is about Mrs. Dalli, because I think we all want to find a solution how we can make it work, how we can change the existing treaties or existing regulation to facilitate abortion law to be a pan-European law. Of course, I think we have to be very creative, and I actually do not believe that the fact that something doesn't exist in law, it is not possible to implement. We saw it, for example, with the MFF, with the new recovery plan. The European Union is a political project. It is very creative if it wants to achieve something. So I think limitations are, of course, there, but also we cannot forget that the European Union, at the end of the day, it is primarily a political project. So if there is a will, we can make it happen. Unfortunately, Mrs. Dalli, even though she is explicitly supporting many of those initiatives, she comes from Malta, and Malta is the country with the most conservative abortion law in Europe and one of the most conservative abortion laws in the world. So it's not an easy partner to discuss these topics. And if I have a second, I'll just share maybe some of the pictures with you. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Okay, so that was actually our last protest in front of the European Parliament, when we were dressed in white dresses and we covered ourselves in blood to symbolize yeah, you can read it in different ways, but a pain of women or the relief of women that need to do an abortion. That's one of our largest protests in front of the EU institutions. This is Schuman. We had around 400 participants, and you can see some of MEPs in the front line. We were also trying to get rid of an organization called Ordo Juris that is very strongly fighting against abortion law. This is the permanent representation of Poland to the European Union. We also produced a number of stickers that we distributed around the entire city. As I said, we tried to also engage with policymakers, with members of the European Parliament. Some of them also, for example, decided to wear T-shirts with our logo. And this is a very nice initiative from either Danish or Swedish MEP that organized an event and asked participants to take a picture with our with this beautiful poster. So you can see that we're trying to organize many protests, but also engage as many policymakers and stakeholders as possible. So thank you so much, and I'm waiting for your questions.
Yes, please, you can ask your question.
Okay, well, hello, bonsoir. I'm feminist from Poland and also supporter of Spring Party. And I not so a question, but I would like to address something that Karolina said about making abortion common. And I would like to recall the title of article that showed magazine, Polish magazine High Heels, that abortion is okay, and that magazine caused a big storm, was very seen as very controversial, and I think that I think that making people think that abortion is okay can lead to slowly to also success, because when we think that abortion is okay, then we don't judge other women and in general with uteruses. And for me, the person who had an abortion and it was traumatic for her or for this person is respect the same deserves the same respect as a person who had an abortion and it was really for this person. And when we work on this solidarity, then we can build up our sisterhood, and it will be easier for us to fight these radical anti-abortion laws. And then when we all think that abortion is okay, it will not result in other and other kind of so-called compromises, because every abortion will be seen as something that one person needed to do, so the person did it, and it's okay. And we all smart, and we don't take pills as I don't know, powder candies, and we just have to be seen as smart persons who know what to do with their lives. Thank you.
Do we have other questions?
If I may, I can start. If you're okay with that.
Please.
Okay, so thank you so much for your explanations, your testimony also. Thank you. To be more specific, for your involvements, whether it is at the European Parliament, on the academic field, or on the ground. Thank you for that. I just wanted to start with a question for Mr. Biedroń, because you mentioned the directive of last November 26, and the fact that it was necessary to try to open new doors, including to develop some legal tools in order to tackle the abortion ban. So I just wanted to ask you a question about the fact that the resolution mentioned the European Directive 2004/113 at the end of the document, and leading to think that it could be an effective tool in order to tackle the abortion ban. So my question is, could EU anti-discrimination law really be an effective way, and could sexual and reproductive health care be considered as really a service in the wording of this directive? What was the intent? Did you try to advocate for a broader scope of this directive? And thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Should I answer directly?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much for your interesting and important question. I think, first of all, the aim of our resolution, and we must remember this is not a directive. Directive is binding. Resolution is not binding. Unfortunately, it's a recommendation. It's a statement of the European Parliament, but unfortunately, it's not binding. we're working on that. The work is in progress on European Parliament to have more binding documents. It should, but this is a resolution with recommendations, but the aim of this resolution was to embrace all possible legislation within the European Union to show the deterioration of the rights in Poland. So we used the directive as one of the documents we could support our aim, and I think this is one of the steps we can do to achieve a binding document in the future. And I mentioned the EU health strategy, which will be published in the future and will work in the future, as one of the documents which can be supportive in this field. Of course, we must remember that it's hard to have this horizontal approach due to the situation that it's up to member states to decide in this field still, unfortunately, and we cannot do much on that. But we use this directive, among other documents, to show that reproductive rights and human rights and also the reproductive rights are also the health rights and so on and so on. So due to the limited scope of EU legislation in the context of abortion, we were using this kind of tools, but the work is in progress, as I said.
I think we have another question from Emmanuel.
Can hear you.
Okay. So I was looking for my mic. So thank you, Katarzyna, and thank you all for your very rich interventions. It was really fascinating, and it raises many questions, and it was also really moving to see how persons on the ground are mobilizing for these rights. And I had a specific question for Katarzyna, because I would like you to come back to the action brought before the European Court of Human Rights. I was interested because you were saying it was not maybe a real strategic litigation, but at the same time you said that it was a collective try, and you were afraid of the question of the victim before the court. But if I remember well, there was already case law of the European Court of Human Rights as to the situation in Ireland, where without having true victims, identified victims, they accept to look at the case and to pronounce itself as to the not only admissibility but also the violation of the rights. And another question I had was linked to the discriminatory argument. You mentioned Article 3 and violation of the prohibition of inhuman and cruel and degrading treatment, but was Article 14 also used? And if yes, which grounds, only gender or other grounds? I would be interested in knowing much about this strategic litigation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for these questions. So perhaps it was I was not very just as for this initiative that I said that it was not a strategic litigation, because of fact it was very well prepared, and you know, lawyers who prepared it, they made the effort of prepare a motion of 70 pages. So from the legal point of view, I think that everything was done as it should. But of course, there is this fear, well, let's say fear that it won't be admissible, this complaint. But as you said, there are some prospects already before the European Court that they can say that, okay, you have right to complain in this situation. I must say that deep in my opinion, I was like, I should do it. But as a lawyer, I'm not that fully convinced that it will work. But it's not only because of law, but also of the attitude of the European Court of Human Rights. As you know, they also have some troubles, and especially this single judge procedure raised some concerns. So when I was talking to one expert related to the European Court, she said, I asked her, what do you think about this sending cases? Do we have any chances for prospect? And she said, I think you should do it, and you should, the numbers, it counts. I don't know how many persons they sent the complaint, because each of us made it on our own. So we took the questionnaire from the file from the website, and each person sent it, and I did it, and a colleague of mine, we did it. I suppose that there will be hundreds of women who sent this complaint. So she thought it's very good idea that you sent so many applications to the European Court of Human Rights, because perhaps at least they will not do it in the single judge procedure, that they will feel obliged to, you know, to have more deliberation on it. But this is it. As for the admissibility, I really cannot say that I'm really sure that it will work or it will not work. But honestly speaking, in my mind, I did it more for a symbolic reason than for legal reason. But as for the violations, there was the Article 14 was not used in this application. And I suppose I was not the person who wrote the application, but I suppose that it could be because of the practice of the European Court of Human Rights that is still not very eager to deal with Article 14. Of course, it's changed, but I suppose that here perhaps they wanted to follow the articles that have been used in other cases on reproductive rights, and the cases I referred that were already recognized by the court. I think that at least two of them, there was no, the Article 14 was not used by the applicants. I don't remember the last one. I can check it quickly, but perhaps it was complained, but I'm not sure if the court recognized it. I should check. But anyway, I think that before, for instance, the Human Rights Committee, the situation of making a discrimination claim is more easy because of the practice on the committee than before the European Court of Human Rights. I think that we still are working on it.
If I please add a little thing, I think you are right that in the previous cases, there was no argument under Article 14, but it was just also a suggestion, because I think that when reasoning under Article 8 or Article 3 of the Convention, not Article 3, but Article 8 of the Convention, the court could leave a bigger margin of appreciation than if you argue under discrimination and a combination of Article 14 and Article 8. And that could be maybe a way of arguing. But
sounds interesting. Yeah, I think that the issue of developing reproductive claims under ban of discrimination, this is still quite a challenge. But on the other hand, I think that this is one of the paths that should be explored more and more. And I really like decisions of Human Rights Committee in Irish cases, Mallet and Whelan. But although I still think that even the Human Rights Committee, they are in trouble with making this assessment of discrimination claim, because just some comment maybe to other people who are not that familiar with these cases and the discrimination claims. You know, the most problem in discrimination claims is that this is this path of making comparison and making the proof that some other person in similar situation would be treated differently. This is the most classic, you know, procedure of claiming discrimination. So in cases of reproductive rights and the services which are available mostly for women, it's harder. But on the other hand, of course, we have like maternity cases or other cases when it's quite obvious nowadays that there is a discrimination, although this is only women who can be, well, maybe it's not that easy, the person who can be pregnant, but anyway, it's still discrimination. So I think that this is also from academic perspective, this is still the tissue that we can work on it and explore it. I have also one question. May I ask it now or?
Yes,
sure.
yes, please. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a question mostly to Mr. Biedroń, but also to other persons who maybe would like to comment on that, because I have a mostly perspective of international human rights law, and I deal also with the UN system and the CEDAW Convention, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. And of course, this convention was referred in your resolution, and I think that it's really important to have it there. But I wanted to ask you if there is any idea on the table of joining the EU to this convention, the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. As you know, the EU has already acceded to one of human rights convention, I mean the Convention on the Persons with Disabilities. Of course, it was quite specific situation because this convention was developed quite recently, and the EU was among one of actors who negotiated this convention, so it was already ready for accession of the EU. But of course, there are still discussion open about accession of the EU to other human rights treaties involving, of course, the European Convention on Human Rights. But as we know, this is a hard case and complicated case. But is there something happen about CEDAW, or are there any discussions on that? And my second question is maybe also to other of you. Do you think that even if the EU would join this convention, what I think it would be so easy also for political reasons, could it change anything as for reproductive rights, for instance, and access to abortion in EU countries? Thank you.
Should I try to answer?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yes, thank you. And I really appreciate this meeting because it's very concrete and a lot of expertise concerning the convention. Unfortunately, I don't have any knowledge on that, but it's due to the committee I'm in. Usually on this issue, the committee, the LIBE committee, so it's a different committee, is dealing with that. But knowing the controversies among joining Istanbul Convention, as you know, and difficulties with joining the Istanbul Convention, I'm sure it will be very difficult to find consensus on that within the member states. And I have not heard anything on CEDAW so far, and so I don't want to bring bad news at the evening. But of course, I hope in the future this will be possible. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, Chloe, please, you can go.
I hope you can hear me. Thanks a lot for all the speakers.
We can hear you, but not very well.
So I'll speak closer to my mic. No, I just wanted to thank all the speakers for their. Can you hear me now? Okay. So sorry, my computer is getting tired. So I just want to mention that to thank all the speakers for the very interesting discussions, and I would have one comment on the issue of the Istanbul Convention, and complete maybe was Biedroń just said that for the moment the issue is still pending because the European Parliament has requested the Court of Justice of the EU to deliver an opinion on whether the EU had the legal basis and the legal rights to join this convention, also when the EU member states are not in agreement about it. So I think it's just a way to mention that there would be an issue to follow, and maybe another occasion to have a discussion on this issue, because at the moment I think the opinion has been registered, but we are still waiting for the judgment on the matter. And that's it. I won't take more of the floor, but I'll stop.
Do we have any other questions? Any? Yes, Emmanuel?
Yes, I had a question to whoever is wanting to answer about conscientious objection in Poland, because I imagine that it is also something difficult, and that when the decision of the Constitutional Court was adopted, it was also an argument for people who have a conscientious objection to really not have to practice an abortion in any condition, because it was easier after the decision of the Constitutional Court. Are there discussions around this issue? And if you were mentioning, one of you was mentioning the possibility of adopting a new law on abortion, do you think there would be a place for conscientious objection, and what type of objection would be allowed?
Kasia, would you like to answer?
Yes, I suppose that you know much about conscious clause than I. So of course there is a I think that for the present situation the conscious clause has not changed that much, because well, now it's, as you know, it's probably very difficult to have abortion legally, but before it was for sure abused. For instance, there were cases that the hospitals itself, like directors, they declared that in this hospital the conscientious clause is practiced. So, you know, even not a single person saying, okay, I can do it, I cannot do it because of my personal beliefs, but the whole hospital. So it was really clearly abused. And now then after Tysiąc judgment, some procedure was adopted for that, for instance, when the hospital or a doctor is refusing to perform the services, it should the hospital should indicate some other place or some other doctor to perform abortion, but it's still working very hard in reality. I must say that I don't know this project, the new project law very well, but I will check it. It's very interesting, your question. From my perspective, I think that it should be something that's, well, I feel that we cannot just totally, you know, unaccept the conscious clause, because there are some persons who really use it, but the question is how to regulate it to be used really by people for which this is important, not to perform abortion because religious belief, and for other persons this is really just the issue of social pressure, the issue of not wanting to have problems, for instance criminal problems, and we should also understand them, of course, but in these cases conscious clause shouldn't be used. That's clear. But I will check it out. I think it's really interesting. But unfortunately, as I told you, I think that the initiative is really great, and for having this liberalization of the Polish law. And I think that many people in Poland, we are really inspired by Irish case and by Ireland, that their way to legal abortion was very impressive. So I think that people also, they dream to have such a situation in Poland, but probably in current political situation, it won't happen. But I think that it's very important to have these kinds of initiatives.
With one exception, if I may, I think everybody here would agree that we should not have a referendum in Poland, and we should never put a referendum when discussing human rights. So I think that's the only difference that we should definitely signalize when discussing a new abortion law in Poland.
And just maybe a bit stepping out of my role of moderator, just to complete on the conscience clause. So this judgment in 2015, well, I mean, of course, this can be changed through legislation one day, but it's actually, this judgment gave a huge importance to the right to consensus objection, and basically ignored women's rights and all the international standards on right to privacy, bodily integrity, on autonomy, etc. So because the law which existed tried to find a kind of balance that the doctor could refuse to perform abortion, but was supposed to indicate another doctor to provide women the possibility to obtain abortion elsewhere. And actually the court declared that obliging the doctor to provide this information is also a violation of his freedom of conscience. And actually the whole judgment is a kind of, I don't know how many pages of eulogy to the right to consensus objection and to the freedom of conscience. And women is completely, this is also something important about abortion rights in Poland, and women simply disappear in this reasoning. So I think with the new law, one day, hopefully, we'll also need to overturn this completely unbalanced approach to competing rights. But I'm stepping out of my role. I can see that there is also a question from Małgorzata.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, before another question will be posed, I need to go. I'm starting another meeting with Tęczowa Wiosna, which is a Rainbow Spring movement, and they're already waiting for me. I was to commence the meeting, so I need to be at the beginning with them. So I'm so sorry about that. So I need to switch off from the meeting. And thank you very much, and good luck. And it was my honor and pleasure to be with you tonight.
Thank you very much for being here.
I need to run for the meeting.
Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
So yes, Małgorzata, you can ask your question.
Yeah, sorry. Actually, it was a question that I wanted to address to Deputy Biedroń, but I don't know if it makes sense if I ask it now. Maybe somebody could at least give me a kind of short answer. I was thinking, because he was saying about this convention on elimination of discrimination of women in European Parliament, and of course that as many of participants here, I am as well involved in feminist movements in Poland, and as I live abroad, we have created this movement, Polish Council, or Polish Women Council abroad. So we are acting from abroad for the case of Poland. So I was wondering if something like kind of citizen initiative, Inicjatywa Citoyenne or Inicjatywa Obywatelska would make sense, because if Deputy Biedroń says that in the European Parliament there are many cases cannot succeed because they have different views and different opinions. I don't know if you may help me, if this kind of citizen initiative will have chance to succeed, if it will come maybe from the citizens and not from the deputies. And of course, if it comes from citizens, it has to be submitted to European Commission, not to European Parliament, of course, as the procedure of the Citizen Convention says. So I don't know if you can give me some encouragement or maybe discouragement, maybe some realistic point of view. I don't know if such a initiative could succeed or could work out. Thank you very much.
Who would like to try to answer this question?
I can give just a short comment. According to the Lisbon Treaty, you need 1 million signatures from at least 1/3 of member states, so 7 countries. And it should be an issue of concern of all the other member states. So this makes the situation quite difficult, not impossible, but difficult. There are, I think, around 10 initiatives brought by citizens on various issues. And I think so far none of them succeeded, because whether you have an initiative coming from the Parliament or an initiative coming from citizens, at the end of the day, it's the Commission that has to come up with a proposal, and the Commission has exclusivity on executive power under the EU treaties. So we are coming back to the same point, that the Commission will not be willing to put such a proposal. I think it's quite unlikely, but maybe someone can believes differently.
So perhaps I can add something. I honestly speaking, I don't know how this initiative works in practice, so I don't want to say anything about prospects of success. But I was wondering if it's how to say, si ça vaut la peine, you know, if it's really worth to do it. I mean, that was my question about accession of EU accession to CEDAW. Although I'm a great fan of CEDAW, and I think that this is the most progressive treaty on women's rights and the human rights, and although it's quite old because it's, you know, it has been established more than 30 years ago, I was wondering if even the EU joined it, if it would, if it changed something as for abortion. I mean, because the thing is that, of course, in the CEDAW itself, you have anything about access to abortion, but of course you have provisions about women's health and other about rights to decide about your family matters and so on and so forth. So of course the CEDAW committee interpretation of the convention is very progressive and abortion is covered by it. But I'm wondering, because, you know, when the EU joined the treaty, it will be bound within, that's how I understand, that it will be bound within its competences. This is how it goes with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So, of course, it will be obliged to perform the obligations imposed by CEDAW. But I think that I cannot imagine that it would change situation as for abortion rights in specific countries. Of course, maybe I don't know. I feel that I think it would be really nice to have CEDAW on board on the legislation of the EU legislation, and it would be really a good message and the signs that we care for women's rights, and perhaps something more happened than this anti-discrimination approach, which is, as we know, quite narrow. But I'm not that sure that it would bring legislative changes as for obligation of the EU member states. But I'm not a specialist of EU law, so I'm not disclaiming because I'm a woman, but I must say that really it's so tricky, and I try to deal with it. I'm interested in temporary special measures and positive action, so the EU law is really very important for that topic. But I must say that for a person who is not really deep in the topic, the EU law is really tough. But on the other hand, I really like idea of joining human rights and the expertise on human rights with the EU law, because I feel that it's really important piece of legislation, and we should be able to switch between the system and to take from them what is the most important for us and the things we are working on. Thanks.
Thank you. Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. Actually, we are running out of time, so thank you very much again to all our speakers, and thank you to you all for being here with us tonight. And I think we'll close our meeting for tonight. Thank you and bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.